Today, we're going to be talking about the lone wolf lie. Gentlemen, you have been sold a lie. Society, movies, books, they all glorify this lone wolf mentality, making you believe that going at it alone is a badge of honor. But here's the truth, guys. The lone wolf always dies in the end. The pack survives. Scratch that. The pack thrives. Right now, your business is suffering, your marriage is strained, and you feel stuck. Not because you're not trying hard enough, but because you're trying to do it alone.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in the Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
Hey guys, before we get into it here today, I really invite you once again to hit that rating and review on whatever podcasting application you're currently listening to this on. What it does is it really helps us get out to all the men out there who are needing our help, who really need the message of masculine leadership. Hit me up on the socials. I'm doing a lot of really cool things right now, teaming up with some different people. I have the Forge Leader Blueprint, which is going on right now. I'm bringing a cohort through. I'm going to be starting another one here very soon, and there's limited spots, so take advantage of it. And this is where I take men on a 12-week journey. And I can't give you all the details, but what it is 12 weeks of tribe calls, which fits into this message perfectly. And then it's 6 one-on-one coaching sessions. And then there's some accountability and different things that are on the tail end, free gifts that will help you level up in your leadership at home, with your family, and at work with your team, and really help you build an awesome marriage as well as bring in that revenue. Anyways, we're going to get into it right now, but don't forget to get a hold of me on the socials. Hit that rating and review, smash subscribe, all those things that keep us relevant. Guys, I used to buy into this lie myself. I thought I had to handle everything on my own. My business, my family, my life. I believed that asking for help was a weakness. But being a lone wolf, it isn't strength. It's isolation. And after working with many men over the last decade, and in my Forge Leader Blueprint course, I've seen it firsthand. The lone wolf mentality, it's a trap. I want you to think back for a second at all of the men, that you might admire in books or TV, movies, whatever. Die Hard, Clint Eastwood. Those are some examples, right? But let's think about a little bit more modern day examples. Let's talk about Batman or John Wick or Jason Bourne. All those lone wolves that we as men look up to because they're strong, they're tough, they're capable. And what modern culture wants us to believe is that these are all self-made men, and they're praised. But real success stories always include a tribe behind the man. In modern society, we're conditioned to believe that men should man up and figure it out alone. Guys, that can be further from the truth. And here's some fatal flaws of having that lone wolf mentality. We all love these characters, right? We love them for the things that I mentioned before, the strength and the courage and the capability. But here's the truth about it. Lone wolves, they're not free. They're trapped. They're trapped inside of cages of their own mind. Let's talk about Batman. Batman is obsessed, and he's emotionally closed off as a man. Batman isolates himself because of the trauma that he endured in his life. But in doing so, he becomes emotionally closed off to everyone around him. He refuses help, even from people like Alfred and people who are really care about him, but he always refuses help. His obsession makes him incapable of strong relationships. And here's the biggest irony if you watch any sort of Batman throughout the years. His greatest enemy, the Joker thrives on Batman's loneliness. Think about it. So here's the reality check. Many of you who are listening right now are doing the exact same thing. You're putting up walls, you're putting up boundaries, you're not communicating, you're not getting a tribe around you. You're grinding alone, you're pushing people away, and you're acting like you can handle it all. But who's got your back in all that? Let's move on to John Wick. John Wick is one of my favorite characters. I love watching John Wick movies. But John Wick, he's the man who lost everything and has nothing left to fight for. Now, John Wick was once part of a brotherhood. But when he lost his wife, he detached. His rage makes him a force of nature. And that's what appeals to men. But at what cost? No matter how many people he takes down, he's always on the run. He's never at peace. And some of you right now, you guys are running on pain. Maybe it's from a betrayal, like a divorce, a failure. And it made you decide, I can't trust anyone. I'll handle it myself. I'll handle it on my own. But that rage and pain, it can't sustain you forever. And then there's the third one, Jason Bourne, who I wanted to call out here. Jason Bourne movies, I don't know what it is. Every time I've tried to watch one, I've fallen asleep. So I don't know a lot about Jason Bourne. But what I do know is that Jason Bourne is the man who doesn't know who he is. I also know that he's hyper capable, but he's lost in society. He's a weapon without a cause. He's always searching, and he's never rooted. The man trusts no one, which means simply that he's always vulnerable, guys. Now, if you're listening and you feel like you're drifting, always reactive, never fully in control, it's because you're the same. You lack identity. No brotherhood, no accountability, no real direction. Guys, now that we've talked about the lone wolf, let's talk about the power of brotherhood for a second. And I want to give 3 examples of men who thrived with strong circles, with strong tribes. Let's start off with a biblical example, and King David and his mighty men. The biblical blueprint for brotherhood right here, guys. Most people know King David as the young shepherd boy who took down Goliath. That's great. But here's what most men overlook. David wasn't just a warrior. He was a leader surrounded by an elite group of men. The Bible calls them David's mighty men. And you can find that in 2 Samuel 23, 8 through 39. These men weren't just weak followers. They were elite warriors who stood with David in battle, fought for him, and sharpened his leadership. David was already a powerful warrior, guys, but here's what really matters out of the deal. He became a legend because he had a brotherhood of strong men at his side. So what can be learned from King David? Well, here's what I pick up. Even the greatest warriors, they need a brotherhood. A lone king can fall very easily. A king with warriors builds legacy. Brotherhood protects you, fights for you, and makes you a greater leader. The second example that I want to give is the Navy SEALs. We all know who the Navy SEALs are. They are some serious badass sons of bitches. I've had a couple of them on the show already, and you know how badass they can be. But being on the show, you also probably understand that they can be vulnerable, just like the rest of us guys. But the Navy SEALs are the most elite warriors on this entire planet, in my opinion. But here's the thing. A SEAL is highly skilled as an individual, but he never fights alone. Their entire system is built on brotherhood. You win together or you fail together. Every SEAL team member has a swim buddy, someone who is always watching the other's back, holding him accountable, and making sure he doesn't slip. So here's why it matters, guys. The greatest warriors in modern history, they don't operate as lone wolves. They know their power comes from their unit. And what should we take away from that? Is the strongest men, they don't fight alone. They train, they suffer, and they win together. Brotherhood isn't about encouragement. It's about accountability and survival. Without a strong team, even the toughest man is vulnerable. And then let's bring it back to a third example, which is a sports example. I want to talk about Michael Jordan for a second and his experience with the Bulls. Now, you can believe this or not, right? But Michael Jordan is widely accepted as the greatest basketball player of all time. But here's what most men ignore about that. Jordan wasn't winning until he built the right team around him. I never said he wasn't a good player. He just wasn't winning overall. Before he had Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson, Jordan was just a talented player with no championships. It wasn't until he trusted his team, embraced accountability, and let others sharpen him that he became the greatest of all time. So here's why it matters, guys. Even the greatest athlete in history, he couldn't win alone. And what I take away from this is raw talent isn't enough. You need a team that pushes you beyond your limits. A lone wolf can be a great man, but a brotherhood, that makes you legendary. Surrounding yourself with the right men isn't a weakness. It's the secret to winning. Guys, I got a 5-step framework here for you today to help you build that brotherhood that you need around you to help you go forward. Each one of these parts of the framework are going to be broken down into a couple different things. I'll name the step of the framework. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then I'm going to give you an action step to follow up with. So I suggest that you have the pause button ready. You have a pen and a piece of paper ready to write these things down. Or you simply just look at the transcription of this episode, and that'll help you go forward on implementing this framework. So let's start off with how we build out this tribe of men who can help build you into a stronger man. So the first step is you need to identify the right men to have in your life. You need to find warriors, not whiners. So here's some people that you don't want. You don't want yes men in your life. Yes men are awful. They're these guys that never challenge you. They're these guys who accept the thought that it's okay that you sit on the couch and you eat Cheetos. The ones who tell you it's okay when you didn't meet your commitments and something failed. You also don't want complainers in your life. These are the men who vent and vent and vent, but then they lack taking any sort of action. And we all know these kind of people. I'm going to use an example about a trip with some friends that we took. And there was this additional person on this trip. And everything was bought and paid for. The hotels, the tickets to an NFL game, everything was bought and paid for. But this person complained about everything, about the hotel accommodations, about the meal, about everything. But they never took any action. They didn't say, hey, I'll pick up this meal, let's go here, right? I'll pay for an upgrade and do this, whatever. They just wanted to complain. And then another type that you don't want in your circle, that you don't want in your tribe, is the excuse maker. They're always talking about change, but then they never do it. They never make that change because they're more into the excuse than they are actually changing. So here's who you really need. You need men who are going to challenge you, men who are disciplined, men who are trustworthy. So here's the action step. What I want you to do right now, hit that pause button. Wherever you're listening to this, I want you to hit that pause button. And I want you to write down the 5 men in your life who fit this standard. It could be a biological brother. It could be someone that you work with. It could be someone that you go to church with. It could be a multitude of different places where you meet this individual. But I want you to write down 5 who fit that standard. And guys, if you can't think any, it's time that you expand your network. Step 2 in all this is we have to set the right standard. This is the code. We all have to live by standards. And if they're not written down, then how can people live to an expectation? So we need to develop the code of our tribe. So here's 3 that you might consider. 3 non-negotiables for a tribe might be radical accountability. No sugarcoating, no BS, simply accountability. Second one might be no gossip, no backstabbing. Brotherhood is built on loyalty. Then the third one might be growth being your mission. The tribe that you create, it can't just be about hanging out. That can be part of it. But it's also got to be about growth. Men have to work together to grow together. So here's the action step for step 2. Once that you've established the 5 people that you're going to meet with, at minimum, what you need to do is establish 3 core rules with that tribe of men. I just mentioned 3. You can use those if you truly believe those. But what are the 3 most important things that you're going to go after? My tribe has 10. But here's the thing, no weak standards. If they're weak, they're not worth having. Step 3 in this framework on building out your tribe is commit to real accountability. You can't have any weak links in your tribe. Now, I want to make a definition here. You can't have a weak link. However, men will be, I don't even want to use the terminology, men will be vulnerable. I was going to say weak, but men are going to seem like they're breaking down from time to time when you're in a true accountability group. So there's a difference in between weak links and being vulnerable. And you guys got to understand that, because we can be vulnerable. What we can't have is we can't have people who don't show up and don't do what they're supposed to do and don't hold themselves to higher standard. So here's some ways to hold your tribe accountable. Have weekly check-ins. And in these check-ins, what you're going to do is you're going to report progress, you're going to report failures, and you're going to talk about your goals. And then you're going to challenge each other. You're going to set monthly goals, monthly challenges. And if you fail, there's consequence behind that failure. No excuses. If a man keeps on making the same excuse, the tribe calls it out. Now, this is a leadership point here. You know when you've built true accountability because your team calls out when someone is not going down the right road. The leader doesn't always have to do it. Same way with your accountability tribe. The tribe needs to call it out. Everybody needs to hold each other accountable. So here's your action step for step number 3. I want you to schedule a weekly check-in with your tribe and then make it happen. All right, let's walk into step number 4 of this framework. And that's create a structure. Brotherhood needs consistency. Now, what strong brothers do, they have scheduled weekly or bi-weekly meetups. They have a clear structure for those meetings, like check-ins, challenges, accountability, all those things that we just talked about before. And they are intentional about pushing each other forward. True love for your brother doesn't come from coddling. It comes from wanting more for that man. True love of your brother comes when you want more for his business, more for his marriage, more for his fatherhood, more for his love of God. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. So here's your action step for step number 4. Decide on a consistent meeting time with your tribe and structure the tribe. Have those check-ins and have an agenda, all those kind of things. If you go in without a plan, the plan ultimately turns to failure. I'm going to tell you guys, I've belonged to a lot of different things over time. I belong to church groups. I belong to men's groups. I belong to all sorts of different things. But the times that we don't have a strong agenda, the times when we don't push each other, the times when we don't call out each other's bullshit, those are the times when I have no use for this place anymore. And it was subconsciously. It wasn't even a decision that I made. It's just like, yeah, that group's not doing anything for me. All right, step number 5. This one's going to be, well, I shouldn't say that, but I'm going to say it anyways. This one has potential to be the hardest step. Just like we talked about weak links earlier, in step number 5, we have to cut those people out. The weak links take down the entire tribe. We hear it talked about all the time that inside our workplaces, that one piece of cancer can destroy the entire flesh. So we need to cut out the weak links, because what happens is it protects the strength of our tribe when we do that. Now, here's some signs to identify that weak link, that they don't belong to the tribe. That man doesn't follow through. That man might complain more than he acts. He may get defensive instead of fixing his behavior. The men that I call friends in my life, the men who I admire and look up to in my life, I can call them out on their behavior. I can tell them exactly what I think, and they don't get defensive. They understand that I want better in their life. For example, there was this man, and this just shows his character. He wasn't necessarily in my tribe at that point, but I sat by him at a conference, and he asked me what I thought of something. And I knew this man well enough at this point, after having about 15, 20 minutes of conversation with him, that I wanted that man to win. I wanted this man in my circle because he was wired like I am. So I told him exactly what I thought. I thought that his presentation was weak. And I told him that. And I told him that he didn't address different parts that he should have in what he was talking about. And this man, I love his character. I love his character because he was very humble about it. And he goes, you know what? You're right. I'm going to change that right now. And he changed a few things and, took a blend of what his thoughts were, took a blend of what my thoughts were, and came out with something very powerful. Now, in retrospect, I didn't know who he was at the time. I didn't realize that this man had written books on the topic that I just called him out on. I didn't realize that he's been a host of TV shows, that he has a rags to riches story, that he actually helps businesses grow, all these different things. But once again, I was becoming part of his tribe. He was becoming part of mine. He is not a complainer. He follows through. He took the gift of honesty and accountability that I had to give him and implemented it and came out with a better product. So here's what to do if you run into that man who's a weak link in your tribe. If a man, excuse me, I'm a little bit stuffy today. If a man repeatedly shows that he's not committed, it's as simple as this. He's out. You have to remove him from your tribe. Brotherhood is about iron sharpening iron. It's not about having Play-Doh and trying to sharpen iron. That's not going to work. All right, so guys, here's the action step for step number 5. Identify anyone in your circle who is toxic, lazy, or consistently making excuses. And I would suggest that you have a conversation with that person right up front and say, hey, let's just call him Brad. Hey, Brad, I've noticed XYZ. I've noticed that you've been missing your commitments. I've heard the frustration from the other men about you missing your commitments. And I want you to know that I love you, brother. I want the best for you. But if things don't change, I can't have you in this tribe because you're watering it down. And sometimes that's going to get a little bit, they're going to get defensive. Other times, they're going to take that and they're going to go, you know what? You're right. I haven't been honest with you guys. I've been hurting on the inside. Me and my wife are going through a divorce. And I shouldn't have held that back from you. You know, something along those lines. And that's a point of growth. And you accept them back into the tribe. And then there's going to be other times that he's just like, I get it. I get it. I'm not committed to this. It's too much work or whatever. They make their own decision. And then the fourth thing is really when they go, okay, I get what you're saying. I'm going to work harder. And then they go to work. Or they don't. And if they don't, you need to hold them accountable and follow through with what you said at the beginning. It's as simple as that. So guys, let me recap these real quick. So step number 1 is making sure you're going to identify the right men for your tribe. You're finding warriors, not whiners. The second step is you're going to choose standards for your tribe. You're going to write down a code for the tribe. Number 3 is you're going to commit to real accountability with your tribe. You can't allow weak links in this. It's got to be real accountability. Step 4 is you're going to create a structure for your brotherhood, for your tribe, because they all need, and you need, consistency. And then number 5 is you're going to cut out the weak links. You're going to protect the strength of the tribe by not allowing bullshit. Guys, here's the end goal. I want you to become an unstoppable force. And with the right men, with the right standards, and with the right accountability in your tribe, here's what's going to happen. You're going to become stronger mentally, physically, and emotionally. You're going to have men in your life who push you forward. And finally, you're going to start winning in business, in marriage, and in leadership. This is exactly what we do inside the Forge Leader Blueprint, which is my 12-week course, which is both a team, a brotherhood, as well as one-on-one coaching for me. But it's also what we'll be doing in the Knight's Order, which is coming starting in April. So here's the final call to action, fellas. You have 2 choices. You can keep doing life alone, pretending the lone wolf path is going to somehow work out. Or 2, you can find a real brotherhood. You can build your tribe and become the leader you were designed to be. If you're tired of spinning your wheels alone, the Forge Leader Blueprint exists for this exact reason. Send me a message with the word Knight, K-N-I-G-H-T, and I'll show you what's next.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the Forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the Forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the Forge.